Mussolini and his fascist party's dream was to recreate the glory of ancient Rome. The immediate goal was to control the Mediterranean Sea, making it, as during the time of Caesar, Mare Nostrum, our sea. To this end, Italy pursued its own war aims independent of Germany, which pursued its own dream of Lebensraum, living space, in the east. To achieve this goal, Mussolini would launch the largest naval operation in the Mediterranean to finally crush British naval power. Mussolini's vision of turning the Mediterranean into an Italian lake was impossible to realize as long as the Royal Navy and French fleets maintained their dominant position in the region. Despite the country having started an extensive shipbuilding program that resulted in a fleet of modern battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and submarines, the combined strength of the French and British Mediterranean fleets dwarfed Italy's Regia Marina. However, by the beginning of 1941, the balance of power in the Mediterranean had completely changed. The once powerful French Navy had been neutralized by the British bombardment at Oran, to prevent its seizure by Germany. The Royal Navy was hard-pressed by its commitment to conduct convoy protection duty in the North Atlantic and guard home waters against a possible German invasion. This left precious few second-rate ships to guard its possessions in the Far East and the important passage to India through the Mediterranean and the Suez Canal. However, the British struck first in a bold move to try and reclaim parity in the Mediterranean. The bulk of the Italian fleet was anchored at the well-protected port of Taranto in the Arch of the Italian Boot. On the night of November 11, 1940, ferry Swordfish torpedo planes from the aircraft carrier HMS Illustrious sank or damaged several of Italy's capital ships in a daring raid. Mussolini, who was desperate for victory after suffering disastrous land battles, was confident that he could defeat the scant British forces arrayed against him. The Italian North African offensive in Libya had been a disaster, and their Greek campaign was in disarray. In desperation, Mussolini, to his embarrassment, had to turn to Hitler for help. Germany was willing to help Italy with the war with Greece, but at a price. Allied convoys of troops and supplies were moving freely between Egypt and Athens, strengthening the Greek advance. The Nazis wanted that supply line cut, and the Italian Navy was the only tool at hand. The Italians agreed as long as the Germans would provide air support. In an effort to catch British convoys by surprise and secure the seas around Greece, Operation Gaudo was born. A powerful Italian fleet under the command of Admiral Angelo Iachino weighed anchor on March 26, 1941, steaming under radio silence. The Italians hoped to avenge Taranto and redeem the pride of their naval tradition. Aboard his flagship, the brand-new 45,000-ton battleship Vittorio Veneto, Iachino steamed out of Naples and moved boldly southward to rendezvous with the rest of his fleet, which was made up of a battleship, 8 cruisers, and 13 destroyers. British codebreakers at Bletchley Park had unlocked numerous German and Italian codes that provided intelligence on a large Italian sortie in 3 days. Admiral Cunningham, the British commander in Egypt, was convinced that this was a great opportunity to finally engage the Regia Marina in a decisive battle on British terms despite not knowing their number, purpose, or destination. On March 26, Cunningham had been given the full order of battle and objectives by the time the Italian fleet was steaming out of the harbor. In Egypt, 3 battleships and the carrier Formidable were ordered to build up steam, ready to put to sea, while air and sea assets already in the theater were placed on standby. Although the trap had been set, it could not be activated yet. The concealment of the Enigma intelligence was paramount in Allied thinking. There had to be a plausible reason in the Italian mind for why the British acted the way they did. On the evening of March 26, a carefully directed Sunderland reconnaissance plane happened to spot part of the Italian fleet. Cunningham's trap could now be set in motion since the scout plane had made its presence known. On March 28, at 1700 hours, orders were issued for all British warships to gather south of Crete. Iachino launched a short-range scout plane at 0600 on the morning of the 28th from the deck of the Vittorio Veneto. It wasn't long before the scout spotted 4 British light cruisers, only 50 miles ahead of the leading Italian cruiser squadron. The combined Italian fleet increased speed to engage the outnumbered enemy, with the fast heavy cruisers surging ahead at 30 knots. The British cruisers under the command of Admiral Pridham Whipple were steaming southeast to converge with the rest of the fleet coming in the opposite direction. At 0745, lookouts on the cruiser HMS Orion sighted smoke from Italian cruisers. Knowing that he was outgunned, Pridham Whipple ordered a retreat toward the safety of the distant battleships. By 0812, the nearest Italian cruiser, Trieste, opened fire with her 8-inch guns on the British cruiser HMS Gloucester, which was laying a protective smokescreen. In the meantime, Cunningham's main British fleet had come within 70 miles. The British admiral was frustrated by the uneven speed of his fleet. Cunningham ordered the Valiant, the newest and fastest of the British battleships, to steam ahead with destroyer escort after learning of the Italian attack on Pridham Whipple's cruisers. The Formidable was then ordered to launch her Ferry Albacore biplanes for a torpedo attack. By 1100 hours, the Orion spotted Vittorio Veneto rapidly closing in from a distance of only 16 miles while firing her 15-inch shells. The attack was thwarted by the timely arrival of the first flight of Albacore torpedo planes, which forced the Vittorio Veneto to take evasive action, allowing the British cruisers to escape. Iachino made the decision to head back home after losing the element of surprise, running low on fuel, and failing to receive the promised air cover. By 1500 hours, 3 Albacores had located the Italian battleship and were closing in. One of the biplanes slammed a torpedo home at a distance of 1,000 yards before being shot out of the sky. The only British loss in the conflict would be this one torpedo bomber. The Vittorio Veneto was struck in the stern below the waterline, taking on water and slowing down. Unknown to the Italians, Cunningham's main British fleet was only 65 miles away and closing quickly. By 1900 hours, the Italian fleet had formed a protective cordon around the Vittorio Veneto and was under attack from 6 Albacore and 4 Ferry Swordfish torpedo planes from Formidable. Only one hit was made by the attackers, but it proved critical to the outcome of the battle. The heavy cruiser Pola was hit by a torpedo in the growing darkness, stopping dead in the water with a flooded engine room and no electrical power. Iachino, still unaware of the approaching British fleet, gave the order for the other cruisers of Pola's squadron, Zara and Fiume, along with their 4 destroyers, to tow their stranded sister to safety while the rest of the fleet continued on its course. Before dawn exposed them to danger, they were expected to finish the rescue mission and make it to the safety of the port. Unknown to the Italians, the night brought the advantage of radar to the British. In the darkness, HMS Orion picked up the helpless Pola on her screen. Around 2230 hours, lookouts spotted the Italian cruisers in line-ahead formation. Admiral Cunningham ordered all 3 of his battleships on a parallel course. Their 15-inch guns were laid down at a point-blank range of only 3,800 yards. The Italians were totally unaware of their presence. Searchlights illuminated the Italian ships at a signal, and all 3 battleships fired their 15-inch guns. Within 5 minutes, Fiume, Zara, and the destroyers Alfieri and Carducci were reduced to burning wrecks. The listing Pola, which had gone unnoticed for a while, had been abandoned by the crew and finished off with torpedoes. The only Italian reaction after the shocking surprise was the firing of torpedoes by 2 of the destroyers and the aimless fire of one of Zara's 40mm guns in the direction of the British warships. The wounded Vittorio Veneto and her remaining escorts made it safely back to Italy. The operation exposed the inefficient communication between the Italian air and naval forces as well as the enormous tactical advantage radar provided the Allies in nighttime combat. The Battle of Cape Matapan was the last major offensive operation of the Italian Navy in World War II. If you liked this video, there are many similar high-quality videos on my channel.
Subscribe and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you don't miss the next video.